So I'd like to officially schedule Planning and Traffic Commission meeting of May 10th, 2018 to order. And please let the record reflect that all Planning and Traffic commissioners are in attendance. And if Commissioner Carter would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand.
Okay, again, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll start off with public comments. If there was anybody that would like to address the Planning and Traffic Commission, now's the time to do it. Do we have anybody?
I have not received any speaker cards.
Going once, going twice, gone. And we have some presentation items, I'm assuming, yes?
Yes, we do. Our first presentation item this report, and Charles Hill is here with this evening.
Good evening, Mr. Commissioner and members of the Commission. Let's see. During the first quarter, code enforcement added 130 new cases to the existing 45 carried over from the fourth quarter of 2017. We closed 85 cases during the same period, and we began the second quarter of 2018 with an active caseload of 90 cases. Tongue-tied tonight. I'm prepared to take any questions you may have on this report.
Thank you. Anybody?
I'd like to apologize to you. I requested a ride-along, and I haven't been able to book that with you on my fault.
No problem.
So I'm still interested. And now that it's
Absolutely.
warmer, I'm ready. All right.
Anytime, you just email me.
Next.
Okay, our second presentation this evening is Project Quarterly Update, and Taylor Abernathy has a report this evening.
Hello, Commissioner and Commissioners. Thank you for having me. I'm Taylor Abernathy. I'm the Principal Civil Engineer here at the City of Lake Forest. I'm responsible for the Capital Improvement Program. Tonight we are talking about the Public Works Department Project Quarterly Update from January through March of this year. I hope everybody had a chance to take a quick look at it. Most notable project that we have going on is our Civic Center construction project. At this moment, we are close to completing the parking structure. It should be done by the end of this May. We have 90% of our campus contracts awarded, and we should be starting construction on all of them soon. Our foundations for the actual structures are getting ready to be poured here within the next couple of weeks. So that's one of our largest ones I wanted to highlight. Outside of that, I'm here to take any questions on anything specific that you guys have.
So when they're building a project like that, so you notice you started with the parking structure.
Correct.
Is there any reason? I mean, did most of them, do they start with a parking structure? Is there
a lot of the larger projects, they tend to start with the parking structure, mainly because it's one of the, in most places you're taking away when you're building a bigger campus. This one is a fully undeveloped site, but parking structures tend to be one of the first items that get there.
So I suppose that they can use that at some point while they're...
Yeah, it'll be open here by the end of May, and the bottom part of the rest of construction.
Just curious, thanks. Anybody else?
Yeah, I noticed we're getting started on the Parkway and Irvine Boulevard modification. I guess we're in just this discussion phase with regard to that. Will that be coming up to the Traffic Commission for us for discussion or anything with regard to that? The reason I asked, when we previously on the Planning Commission, when they did that center development right there at Lake and Trabuco, I know we had long discussions about the right turn, only through turn, and issues that were there. And I was just curious for the Commission have any input on that.
So the project that's going out is an interim project, basically to add the right turn eastbound turn lane there. It's within the existing right-of-way structure that we have, and that was it was approved by the city council for that. Ultimately, we have an ultimate project there that's part of the Lift 'em program, and that to the Traffic Commission, I believe.
So we will have an opportunity,
Yeah,
not necessarily approval process, but at least to get some input onto it.
yeah, from my understanding, that through the process that we have when we're getting ready for the ultimate design, we're getting consultants on board right now. To start it, it's a longer process because that one has right-of-way acquisition that's required, et cetera. And so during for some comment.
Good. I'm for that because I know we had a lot of discussions on that right turn only and then changed it to a through instead of the right. And I really, it presents some interesting conversations that we need. The other one I was going to ask about, we've got the park replacement of walkways, et cetera, and that's going to be taking place. I know you've done a couple in Pittsford Park here just recently, and going out there, I noticed there's about 23 sections that are pretty well cracked up. So do you have anything, or are you looking for input with regard to that?
So those are CIP maintenance projects. So the way that those come about are our city staff goes out and does an analysis of parks that against our policy. And so anything that has greater than a half-inch displacement or has been structurally destroyed, we look at replacing them citywide within all of our parks. We have actually completed the parks portion of that project, the one that you're making mention of. And now we're completing, it was a two project that we pushed together and bid as one to get some economy of scale there. And now we only have the streets left. Coming up for the next fiscal year, there's additional funding for a similar project. We're going to go back in and address the remaining parks that we had not been able to get on this one. So I don't know if there's going to be anything that comes directly to you guys.
And the reason why I wasn't sure what the criteria was when you decided to replace it versus repair it. So it's a half-inch separation you have to have. And the reason why I ask, I know somebody got out of their wheelchair as a result of that, and I'd like to be a little more proactive rather than that task.
Yeah, so we have a pretty fairly written policy and procedures that we follow for what requires that we go out and grind streets, and then we do joint filler to kind of bridge some of these things. And but that particular program, yes, it is the ones that meet the certain criteria, and yeah, we're aware of the one event, and we have addressed it again to kind of take care of all of Pittsburgh. We kind of adjusted the scope of that project to do it, and we're looking to finish up the portions that we couldn't do because we next year, right at the beginning of next year.
Okay, it was just, and it's not just, Pittsburgh Park I'm concerned about. Anytime we
City-
have anybody
citywide.
going through there, it's a liability that we're...
Absolutely,
So,
and that's what our program's there, but it is a finite.
right. And in particular, Pittsburgh Park, we're going back and take another go at it in a year or so.
Yeah, we review all the parks.
Okay.
And we'll make
That's
those
good.
same
Thank you.
determinations.
Nothing else.
Okay, our third item, that concludes our presentations, and so we next have the consent calendar, approval of the minutes of the Planning and Traffic Commission of April 12th.
Somebody make a motion to approve that?
Motion to approve?
I'll second it.
Now let's vote.
Any discussion?
Oh,
Nope.
nope. Okay, gotcha. All right, let's vote now.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, so we do the public hearing now?
Yes, our first public hearing this evening is a use permit for Elite Automotive on Vista Terrace, and I'd like to introduce Kurt Corey, a contract senior planner. I believe this is, Kurt, your first time before the Planning Commission.
Correct.
Kurt has current, and with that, I'll turn it over to Kurt.
Thank you, Gil. Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. The item before you tonight is a use permit to establish a heavy automotive repair service business that currently offers light automotive repair within an existing 29,472 square foot building. The proposed use would include the addition of a 704 square foot paint booth to the interior of the building. The business currently offers light automotive services, which include minor automotive repair, engine tuning, tire service, and component installation. The applicant requests to establish a heavy automotive repair service use, including engine repair, as well as major body and paint work. The site currently has 61 parking stalls in compliance with the city's parking requirements. All on-site business activities are and would continue to be conducted within the interior of the building. An existing generator located on-site currently operates existing mechanical equipment into the interior of the building and would operate the proposed paint spray booth as well. No additional equipment other than the paint booth, which will be, again, noted, located into the interior of the building, or noise-generating equipment is proposed to be added to the site. Businesses surrounding the site include light manufacturing uses. The closest residential use or development is identified as Whistler Ridge Development, which is approximately 1,300 feet to the south across an existing industrial complex. The proposed use is compliant with all applicable zoning code requirements and is compatible with surrounding uses. Therefore, staff is recommending approval of the use permit. And that concludes my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions that the Commission may have. Here to answer questions as well.
Maybe I'll ask the applicant, but I mean, what's the difference between a collision repair shop and, you know, a heavy equipment shop? In other words, you know, from an talking about minor stuff, or what's
That's what they're requesting for this evening, is that the collision repair now, that they can do them as a major body and paint to the vehicles.
okay, and then heavy repair, it doesn't necessarily mean the weight. We're talking about
Correct.
more
Yes. Right.
stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
Thanks. Not trucks and stuff. We're not talking about, you know, big rig type heavy. We're talking about
Correct.
more. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thanks. Did we have the applicant who was going to give a presentation or something? Or any speakers? Okay, just if you would, your name and your city of residence, please.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Ziad Traye. I am a resident of Lake Forest, and I'm also the owner of Elite Automotive Services.
I didn't have any questions, but, you know, I've known them quite some time, knew them when they were in the auto center. Okay, and I've been by, now all the repairs going to be done in the inside of the building.
Inside the building.
Any parts that you come in, like bumpers, fenders, and all of that, those will also be stored on the inside?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure of.
Public hearing.
I'll second that.
And,
Let's bring it up.
make a motion to accept staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Let's vote.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, thank you.
Okay, moving along. Our next public hearing is the site development permit for an amendment to SDP 0916-4965 for an attached multifamily residential condominium community in Port.
Good evening, Chair Armando and members of the Planning and Traffic Commission. Before you tonight is a request to amend a previously approved site development permit for the multifamily site located in Portola Center South. The Planning and Traffic Commission previously approved Copperleaf, a 233-unit condominium complex, in 2017. This amendment would refine the site plan and on-site amenities, as well as provide a second unit type called Silver Oak to attract a range of buyers. In addition of a new product type that would add an additional 18 units to the site for a total of 251 units, this would be less than the 256 total units previously approved by the City Council under the Portola Center Area Plan for the project site. Of the 251 units proposed, 43%, or 107 units, will remain Copperleaf units. These will vary in size from approximately 1,200 to 2,400 square feet and provide between 2 and 4 bedrooms, including some with dens or lofts. The new Silver Oak units will make up 57% of the site, or 143 units. These units will offer approximately 1,300 to 1,700 square feet and 2 and 3 bedrooms. All of the units will provide attached 2-car garages, and the site will be parked in accordance with the city's parking standards. In addition to introducing a new product type to this condominium project, the amended site development permit refines the site plan to distribute open parking more evenly throughout the site. It provides a centrally located pedestrian paseo to link pedestrian access from the project to the private recreational swim facility, which is located just east of the project site, and it also provides 10% more usable open space for a total of 30%. The amended project also introduces new project amenities, including a dog park, a group barbecue area, a fire pit for social gatherings, a putting green, and additional open play areas. Overall, the amended site development permit achieves greater connectivity within this multifamily condominium project and enhances project livability through redistribution of parking and greater site amenities. Therefore, staff recommends the Planning and Traffic Commission approve this revised site development permit in accordance with the conditions of approval listed in the resolution, with the following exception. The applicant has asked that the timing of Condition 24 be changed. Condition 24 addresses final approvals by outside agencies, including the Fire Department, United States Post Office, and utility companies. The condition currently requires final approval prior to issuance of the first building permit. After discussions with the applicant, staff recommends that the timing of Condition 24 be changed to prior to issuance of the first certificate of occupancy. This will allow the applicant additional time to work with these agencies to gain approval without delaying the start of construction. In addition, safety will not be compromised, as the applicant has stated that temporary fire access will be required by phase as the project is constructed. Should the Commission concur with this revision, staff has prepared a revised resolution for the Commission's consideration and has placed a red line version of the resolution and a revised presentation. The applicant is here to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Do we have any questions of staff before we go to that?
If I may, yes. What is the width of the paving between the rear one being substituted?
24 feet, which is consistent with the street area plan, those alleyways.
Okay. And the street is on my okay. All right. I'll discuss the rest of it later.
Okay.
Just that if I recall correctly, most residential streets are 25 feet in width, so it's pretty close to a standard residential street width, just grants. Great, do we have,
I have another question of Marie.
okay?
So, Marie, if we decide that we don't like this, does the applicant still have the opportunity to use what was approved in 2017?
Yes, that's correct.
So really, what we're looking at is some architectural changes, amenities, and then an additional 18 units.
Additional 18 units. I think you're also looking at an improved site plan in that they're providing additional open space. They were able to redistribute the parking that from what had originally been provided. And in the staff report, I do show an exhibit that shows a little bit of how the two different site plans vary.
Right.
So,
Remember, do you know, Marie, when did they start approved?
we started having discussions with the applicant in February.
Not with the 2017 version.
The 17 version, it initially was submitted in 2016, the last
So
original version,
the original version, which they have been working on for
quite some time.
quite some time. So they probably might have even been designing this back in 2015.
I really don't
Do
know.
you get the sense that what they up to what the market is doing today?
Well, I think that, and to be honest, I think they also listened to some of the comments that were made upon approval of the previous project, and some of those being consideration of maybe additional product type that might allow more entry-level buyers into the market. And that certainly is the intent with the Silver Oak project, because the units are smaller. There are only 2 to 3 bedrooms, whereas the Copperleaf product offers up to 4 bedrooms plus, in some cases, a den. And also, I think that after negotiating with staff over open space amenities, they realized that they could, in fact, provide additional amenities.
All right, well, thanks.
As a follow-up to that, let me think, the current site plan is approved. And they can
Correct.
process that plan, and nothing will deter that plan. And they're asking for an amendment. And there's a couple of things in there that are pretty good, some things that are not so good. But the one option that wasn't discussed is for us to propose some changes to it and have them, if they will, to I just want to make you aware that's an option.
Yeah. I can't get used to having this thing on. I'm trying to figure out at the change in what the alleyways are being called now. It was a Norwegian configuration.
What is it, David?
Wait, I think I'll wait.
Wooners?
The applicant, because I have some questions with regard to that. Okay.
Maybe, why don't we have the applicant talk, and then we can ask them, that might be a better option. Great. Yeah. So are we, at this point, done asking questions of staff? Yeah. And we can open up the public hearing then and hear from the applicant? Let's do that. Just your state and city residents, please.
Dave Mello, Tustin, California. Marie, you did such a wonderful job preparing there. You stole all my thunder, but I did prepare some notes here. So, good evening, Chair Armando and Commissioners. My name is Dave Mello, and I'm here today on behalf of Landsea Homes, located in Irvine, California. Landsea Holding Corporation is the landowner of several parcels in the Portola Center South, located in Portola Center area plan. I'm here tonight to speak with you about the 14-acre multifamily site referred to as Planning Area R7. The site was approved for up to 256 multifamily residential units per the approved area plan. And the most recent SDP proposed 233 units in 35 buildings, each consisting of 5, 6, 7, and 8 plexes, with differing combinations of the 6 plan types. 2 carriage units, 4 townhome-style plans. The project was known as Copperleaf. The amended SDP we are proposing tonight will maintain the model complex in phases 1 and 2 of Copperleaf as originally envisioned. From phase 3 forward, we're proposing to maintain the 4 townhomes plans in 4, 5, 6, and 7 plex clusters as the new Copperleaf product. Combining 3 revised versions of the carriage unit plans in 2 types of 10 plexes and a 12-plex cluster will create a new product line that responds to the community demand to provide the children raised in the community and other young families an opportunity to live in Lake Forest at an attainable price. The carriage clusters, which will be marketed as Silver Oak, are organized on a Woonerf-style street modeled after the living streets of the Netherlands. These spaces encourage shared space by implementing traffic calming and encouraging recreational activity. In the Dutch traffic code, these spaces are restricted to a walking speed. To implement this idea, we've designed an enhanced paver street with articulation of the architecture to interact with the street and terminate on a green space that climbs up against Glen Ranch Road. And if you look in your packet, I think you have a section of that. It looks like this. That kind of gives you we thought, a pretty good feel of what those spaces will live like. Not to be outdone by their outdoor recreational opportunities, the Copperleaf homes have had a makeover of their outdoor space as well. These spaces have been enhanced and reorganized to create outdoor interaction and facilitate movement into the community. And you have a rendering of that our architect put together, give you a good idea of how those buildings interact in that space. All these outdoor enhancements have led to the redesign of the central core of the project, as Marie stated earlier, rearranging the parking to integrate more seamlessly into the site and spread closer to the individual buildings, eliminating the sea of parking and replacing it with a green belt that connects the project to the larger community within Portola South. All these outdoor elements add to the outstanding architecture that was originally envisioned. The beautiful articulation of the buildings, the strong, bold roof lines, as well as the complementary color palettes. The numerous windows allowing light and air into the main living spaces and reserving the private space for the areas adjoining the party walls. The positioning of the entry doors to define the interaction of the private and community space facilitates a sense of arrival and departure from the homes. All these design elements have been rearranged and enhanced to more fully bring out the potential of the site and provide a greater opportunity to meet market demands in Lake Forest. On a final note, I'd like to thank the staff for working with us on this important vision and providing wonderful feedback. Marie has graciously worked with us to refine the conditions in the proposed resolution and work diligently to get the package complete and fully vetted within our aggressive timelines. And Nancy would like to thank you for your service to your community. Question you have?
Start at this end and come this way. Anyway,
The winter thing intrigued me. I mean, it's not for the reason why you think. As I was going through looking at the High Meadow traffic deal, I couldn't figure out, and it wasn't until you pointed out your graphic or your rendering of it, the curb line. I just went, that's the strangest thing I have ever seen, because there's not a straight line curb that's separating the building from the street for parking. But I can see what you've done is in 4 of those, you're allowing parallel park to be 2 vehicles will park in front of that.
Yeah, that's the 2 configurations. The 10 flex allow the regulation of buildings.
Yeah, and I assume that would be just for those buildings that parking would be allowed in front of those buildings.
Yeah, there are marked spaces that are part of the parking plan.
Okay, so it's almost like doing a traffic calming to where you're...
Right.
providing them off the vehicle.
And there's also ones, parking spots at the back of the room there as
Within
well.
also. My only concern is that with traffic flow, and as long as it's parked, I don't see where that would possibly create a problem, because there's no delineating line between when it goes, because it's really going to go in and then come out, go back in and come out, with except for the bump where you have between the two that are parked. Follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're talking about
Yeah,
the curb lines.
where's the street end and where does the front? That was my only concern I had with it, but I can see that if it's parked and provided there is parking there, it will not create a safety type thing. But you might consider, and just from an old dog point of view, a line of demarcation that identifies what the street traffic is and where the
You're saying.
I don't know if that works.
Our civil engineers here.
It gives you a straight line of here's the traffic volume going through. Otherwise, you're going to see a car parked, no car parked, and there's going to be a tendency, I'm afraid, that somebody's going to try and park in front of the one that the street width is only 12 feet at that point versus, I think it would be 15, because I noticed that the width is 12 and 13 on respective sides of that street. Now, explain to me just a little bit this one-off, I guess, one-off or whatever it is.
Woonerf. Yes, Woonerf.
It looks as though it is actually a play area between, almost like a front yard you're placing in between each of the buildings. Would that be a good connotation? I'm thinking of a couple of places I know in Amsterdam and where it seems to be a central gathering, if you will, between the buildings.
Yeah, I think it's a shared space in terms of allowing access to the garages and so forth, but it also allows people to gather on that space and utilize it. It's a share which are enclosed on three sides.
It's not the front yards.
No, it's not.
You said front.
No. What I meant to say, what I tried to impart was, it's like a front yard, but it's between the two buildings. Okay, it's functioning as a front yard area for kids to play, but it's between the two buildings. Concrete front yard, yes.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I would like you to advise our commissioners that we shouldn't interrupt another commissioner without being recognized by the chair.
Well, I think, generally speaking, I would agree, but I think that just pointing out something to assist the other person would be okay. But thank you.
Okay, I disagree.
Yeah, thanks.
I take no objection to people jumping in and making my conversation. Sometimes I get lost. There will be vehicular access within those. Back in.
There will be access, but there won't be parking along the sides that are coming in at designated spots.
Okay. It is a driveway. It's a driveway with amenities, right?
It's welcoming to, but
do you foresee any problems with, knowing kids the way kids are, playing in that area? Okay, I could never get my kids to put their bike away, their trike away, their skateboards and anything of it. Anybody else have the same problem? That, the driveway then becomes cluttered with kids still. I assume something would have to be addressed within the CCNRs or something to let folks know that that is primarily a drive access, okay, that has to be kept clear. That's my only concern. I think it's a very interesting concept. I would like to see, the line of demarcation between, what's the roadway and what's the actual curb line of the building. You guys get what I'm talking about. Okay, I'm going to let somebody go.
Have some.
I had a question. You talked about definition of a carriage unit. I couldn't quite figure out what that meant.
So when we talk about a carriage unit, architect here who could speak to it better if you'd like, but my understanding is it's basically a unit in which the bottom level is primarily a garage, and the living levels are above that, in this case, 2 living levels. And for the most part, all the storage units that we're stating as such in Silver Oak are basically the same nature, with the exception of the 3 plan, which has a small space and a bathroom down on that level of the garage there. The 2nd and 3rd floor.
Have you in other places?
Me personally, or at landscape?
Style of architecture in other places is just kind of unique to Lake Forest.
You know, I wouldn't be able to answer that question because I've only been with the company for about 5 months, and I know I'm more familiar with what we've done here in Southern California and not in some of the other places that they built. So I would assume that we do, because we do quite a bit of building in Northern California, but I don't. Mike, could you answer that question? Okay. So I don't think anybody in this room could.
I could just chime in here, Commissioners. One of the original Shea Baker products had carriage units with the garage, and it was a single level unit, and then the other units were townhomes. So it's something you'll see quite commonly in Orange County.
Okay. On the Woonerf, have you used that in other places in Southern California, or is this the first time you've used it?
It's the first time like elsewhere, and I think our architect and our landscape architect have both been involved with projects that in other cities that have utilized this. And if you'd like, they can speak to that.
I'd kind of like to hear what the experience has been elsewhere with that, because it is unique.
Mike, could you come up and speak to that, please?
Just name the city of residence, please, too.
Mike Fuller, city residence is Riverside, previous resident of Lake Forest. We've done, even in Lake Forest with Shea Homes, we did a court product for over in Baker Ranch. We had the rows and the courts, and the courts have a similar feature to the Woonerf, where it's the drive aisle that's also a shared entry to all the homes, and that's a place where the children are allowed to play and do things. And in Lake Forest, where I grew up, we lived on a cul-de-sac, and the cul-de-sac is where the kids would play. Cars would come in, you'd get out of the way, then you'd go back.
Well, thank
Go ahead, Ron. Thank you.
I have some questions. Basically, I see this application has 2 components. One where the original project was approved, there was a concentration of parking in the middle of the project. It looked pretty much like a parking lot in an apartment project. And the revisions proposed are very favorable. I think it's a good idea. That's one part of the project. The other part of the project is the Silver Oak product type, which I understand that it's has a lower cost point, and it helps bring in additional buyers and that sort of thing. However, another way of looking at it is that the plan was revised and the parking was taken out of the center and redistributed, creating this little pathway through the middle. Okay? But that could have been done with the existing products, the units in the back, right? And then, I don't want to say this awkwardly, but somehow you are getting an 18-unit bonus for revising that parking space, okay? I'm not necessarily opposed to that, okay? What I'm concerned with, and as a disclosure, I did meet with a developer prior to their submittal. We discussed which this.
I'm having a hard time seeing it from there.
Your eyes as bad as mine.
They're not that great. That from this distance, I believe that's Silver Oak. Can you see it?
You drew it.
When you showed this was that it basically, I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but basically what we have is an alleyway with enriched pavement, which is not a bad idea. And it's very narrow, and the buildings are almost next to each other, and they are 3 stories. And the way this is depicted, it shows that like there's ample space in there, and it's not realistic as to what is proposed. And if you look at the rest of the drawings there, the elevations and various things, there is no landscaping in this area.
Would you like me to answer?
Well, let me correct that. Very limited landscaping.
Right. And we're restricted in terms of fire. There was a question earlier that came up in regards to street width, and the first 50 feet coming in is at 25 feet, and the rest of it is at 24 feet, as required by the fire code. So we are somewhat limited on how much we could push it back, and we did do some changes to the elevation to maximize the amount, after we spoke, to maximize the amount. The footprint actually changed, and we got a little bit more landscape space out of it, so our landscape architect could respond to those comments about and enrich it further, which we were trying to find ways to do that anyways. And that is also why we provided the sections and some of the other drawings there to more accurately depict per scale what those spaces will look and feel like in terms of the width, the height relationship, and what's happening with the wall in the back and forth, which I think we talked about.
Yeah. The drawing submitted, the landscape plan, and of course the elevations and such, you can't tell what the landscaping is from the elevations because that's not the purpose. But it has those little 18 by 18 little pockets, and there's like 1 per unit. So the landscaping is 18 squared. Very few, it's 18 inch.
We have our landscape architect here. Would you like him to come up and talk to you about it?
Let me continue. Propose to you. If you were to look at the old site plan and the new site plan, there's a considerable number of more buildings there with the little alleyways. And if you were to take, say, remove one of those buildings, it's page 7 of 15. If you look at what the original was and the number of buildings there, and now you look at the new proposed product, Silver Oak, which is probably a good idea, there's just too many of them squeezed in there. And if you were to take out, say, 1, and I want to scare you, 2 of those buildings and redistributed some of the space in between those walkways, and then I think it would actually serve the purpose that you're proposing. That's a livable, usable area.
I think we actually went from 30.
I'm talking the Silver Oak.
We didn't have a Silver Oak product before. We created one. So that's a new creation. It's a new product type.
Right.
So overall, we went from 35 to 32, I think, and overall the square footage is we have smaller units.
What I'm saying is the original proposals had so many buildings along the back, right? And now there is considerable more buildings along the back, and resulting in the 18 units. But, however, there's no space in this idea that you're proposing to have any landscaping. If you were to remove one of the buildings and redistribute those buildings, you could add about 5 feet per, quote, whatever term you want to use, paseo or whatever. You get about a 2.5 foot on the side of that paving in which you could have some landscaping. And I would think that would fulfill what you're trying to do and make it marketable and actually turn it into a more attractive space. We did talk about it. We talked about vertical green space. Nothing changed.
Okay. We did make some changes to the print slightly to create a little bit more green space in there. We didn't. Did you want to speak?
I just wanted to point out, just to clarify, there actually is one less building in the proposed design versus the old original approval. There's more alleyways, there's more wood earth, but compared to the old original approval, there's actually less buildings.
Overall. I'm addressing.
Along Glen Ranch, specifically along
I didn't
Glen
have the
Ranch,
old
there
one
was
up here. He brought it to me. There's 13 buildings versus the 12 we have now.
So I think we did attempt to reduce the building, and it's been put into, there's more winners because each one is single loaded, so there's more winners.
Is there a reason to request that maybe one of those buildings be removed and take the approximate footage that you would save by the width of the building and redistribute it a little bit to each enhanced or sales that you call?
I think that would be consistent with what our goals were for the project in terms of providing more affordable units for the community. I think that was the direction we want to go in, and that's I think.
To make findings in this approval, and we have Land Use Policy 202, which also includes, at the end, the project should include decorative walls and landscaping. And I'm pointing out to you that it's just not including any reasonable landscaping or sufficient landscaping in that paseo, or whatever you want to call it. And it has the potential to be well-designed, successful. I think you made the error of just squeezing many units. And I don't want to shock you, but two of those could be removed, two of those buildings. I'll be willing to settle for one of those buildings and have that space redistributed. And that's my comments.
Good?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Any questions?
Actually, I meant to ask a question of Mr. Mello. We've talked a lot about parking, and I'm sorry.
We'll see. Thank you.
How do you feel the current proposal is parked? Is it well parked?
I think that it's actually parked because we've met the more stringent requirements of the city in terms of the regulations and the codes for parking a multifamily project. And we've basically, as we did previously, in the currently approved version, what we've done now is we've just taken it from a sea of parking and we've distributed it more equitably, I would think, across the project.
So, Commissioner Demata's comments has my up.
We had the architect and the landscape architect, who both could come up and talk about those winners in a lot more detail than I can.
It is a landscape. Actually. My question involves the Woonerf and the architecture on the what I call the driveway, because I'm not from Switzerland or wherever you got from. Yeah. So you mentioned a cul-de-sac. Mm-hmm. I know that when my kids historically played in our cul-de-sac, and now every child has moved into my cul-de-sac in Lake Forest. They're all living there right now, I know, because they're out there every day. Landscaping is in the way if you're 8. And so I'm wondering, when you design a Woonerf and then you try to put maybe a little bit of landscaping in, isn't it kind of as opposed to flowers?
Yeah, we've got some pockets in there to do that. And to address the width of the Woonerf, we've ran into sometimes where if that gets too wide, somebody's going to try to park a car in their driveway and be blocking the Woonerf and be impeding the flow of traffic in there. So we intentionally left those driveway widths narrower because we didn't want somebody who goes, oh yeah, I've got if we were to widen those all by like 6 feet or 8 feet, you'd put 7-foot driveways in front of the homes, and somebody's going to park a car there. And that is not a parking area, so we don't want anybody to park there. So we intentionally left it narrower. And then we have some landscape pockets so that you still get that sense of greenery in the space. And at the entries, we have different pockets where there's landscape, and the landscaper can talk to the particular planting that they're putting in the area. But that was kind of in the concept, is you've got to have it be the right narrowness so that somebody doesn't attempt to park a car where we don't want them to park a car.
Okay, sounds reasonable. So what kind of landscaping look are we talking about on these winners?
Sure.
Good word, yeah. And you could...
Your name and city of residence.
Yeah, I'm Kristen Kern with SMP. We're the landscape architects, and I'm a resident of Encinitas. So working within a few restrictions that we had, first with the pocket size itself, and then the width between the buildings. We really wanted to go vertically rather than wide. And so the best solution for that was with vines. And so we're proposing a good mix of different colors and textures with vines. And we can do that in a couple different ways with adding trellis structures over the garages to train the vines up and over. And if that's restrictive as well, we can do it all with a cable system, which is really, really close to the building and takes up hardly any space at all. And that not only helps with our space restriction, but it also helps with the address markers. The vines can be trained a little more precisely when they're on the cables. And then with those lighting structures too. So this seems like the best solution for such a limited space. And we're proposing to do a mixture to add variety. And so you kind of have a different feel depending on which Woonurf you're going down. So we're proposing to use the blood red trumpet vine, the violet trumpet vine, the pink jasmine, and cat's claw. And these are a mix of reds and yellows, evergreens that are going to cling to the cable system and really be able to be trained where we want them to go. I know the fire department has pretty strict rules on having the addresses always be showing, and we've used this on previous projects before, and it's worked really well. So we have those two options of having the trellis actually attached to the building above the garages or cable. Thank you.
Finish. Question. In the landscape plans, they're generally plan view. They're seldomly do you submit, other than the recreation thing. Did you develop a plan that actually shows what you're proposing to do? I know we're talking about vertical green space. It would be, I think, necessary for you to submit a plan of what that actually looks like. And, right now we're just talking words. I'm in favor of vertical green space. But nowhere did I see anything, and even in the landscape plan, it just talks about the variation of color in the paseo, my Hispanic heritage, paseo. And the other thing, there was a comment made about a car parking there. Well, the proposal, if we eliminated one of the buildings and took that space and redistributed, you have the width of the pavements, the pavers, and then you could have some landscaping in there. So I'm saying don't make the pavement wider. Leave that at the width that it is. What is it, 26 feet or 24? 24 feet, and then add like 2.5 feet or somewhere 18 inches or something of landscaping, because I know they're all driveways and they're all garages, so you'd have to really struggle to find out how to put some landscaping in there. And other than that, I think the project is acceptable, But our land use policy talks about landscaping, and if you look at these areas in here, there's virtually, I don't want to say no landscaping, but it's very limited. I don't know if you could estimate sales.
Yeah, that definitely is the tightest spot for landscaping. We were looking way back on projects that we had worked on, and on the last sheet, L8 of the landscape plans, we've got our preliminary inspiration images. And so this was early on when we were proposing to have taller shrubs in those small pockets. So since then, we've been able to dig up really good images from successful projects that have grown in vines. And so we can provide that for you now, now that that's kind of a highlight of concern here. So we can supplement this information with more images we found and make it more clear. That's a big concern.
On L8, possibly the pilasters at pedestrian paseo indicates some verticality, but there are no other in here. I think that it would be essential for us in making the final decision. I'm done.
And just confirm, the project had been approved for how many units? And what's approved just for?
Yes, the project was originally for 256, and we're doing 251.
Okay.
And so it just as well, we did provide more open space than the currently approved SDP. I believe, and correct me, is it 10% more? 10% more open space than was currently approved in the SDP that we have right now.
The previous SDP just met the requirement, which was 20%, and this site plan meets that and more. So they're providing 30% open space. If I could also suggest that with regard to your concerns for vertical landscaping, perhaps that's a condition that could be added to the resolution, that vertical landscaping is discussed at the meeting, and I have some verbiage, and I could work on that if you'd like, would be required, subject to approval by the Development Services Director. The decision has been.
If I may. We were in the same meeting, and we discussed it. You have it in your notes, and it didn't happen. Okay, so I'm taken back by the fact that it was ignored, and they just came forward with the same package they had. And that could be an amazing space if a little more effort was put into it. I think with the enriched pavers and some landscaping, and you could say they're granting themselves a bonus of 18 units, okay? If they took one of the buildings away and redistributed that space equally in each one of those paseos, that would be a greatly improved project. And they would still be ahead. I think those buildings are 10 units each. They would gain an additional 8 units.
May I have the floor? I've heard a lot of we, and I've heard a lot of us, but I've only heard one opinion. And thank you, Marie, for your idea with an additional condition, if you will. But when Commissioner de Almeida said that he met, asked.
No, that was the meeting that we were all at.
I did that meeting with the same understanding that we were asking, keyword we, were asking you to go and change your plans. I think that we're a commission of 5, and so far I've only heard one opinion on this particular request to enlarge the WNRF and to tell the landscapers what to do.
Anybody else?
Yeah, can I jump in? What's the you're using those winners for your plant material? What are we looking at as far as dimension? Because I'm familiar with the trumpet vines and things of that nature, and trying to think.
I think,
Because I noticed some range toward 20 or something of that nature. They vary as they're going down. I don't quite understand what the variance is.
that's the issue. I think he's asking, you're asking the depth of the planter beds themselves?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are we talking the 18, 24, 36-inch deep wells?
Oh,
Sorry. Do you have that detail there?
he's talking about how deep they are. I think they're
From the curve face, from the curve face to the face.
yeah, are you talking base to?
No.
Are you talking about the depth of the plant?
No. From the building going into the Woodruff, I'm just killing that name, but that's beside it. You got the building, and you're going to be placing your plant material. What is the depth?
8 inches.
18
That's what they're
inches?
saying. That's what we made it in some areas, yes.
Okay.
I don't think it's consistent because we tried to maximize it.
Consistent as far as the plans.
We tried to maximize it as much as we could in front of all. Make like to the footprint.
I'm just
after
curious
that.
because what you've got, you have a 26-foot wide alleyway or woodruff itself going back in there. And it seems to me we're talking probably an additional 18 to 24 inches of plant area that might provide you with a different type of plant variety that might be able to be placed in there. And you have to forgive me, I've done design work, so that's why I'm familiar with some, like a Tarantha, which is a very small tree or something of that nature, which has got color, et cetera, and height. The trumpet vines and things of that nature are beautiful, and the one I don't particularly care for, and that's the jasmine because it doesn't last that long. But my curiosity is whether those wells could be slightly larger to allow putting something in there of a different variety to change up the variety going in. Because the frontage, as you're going down the street, is the primary concern. This is back between the buildings, okay? I don't know whether it needs to have that much landscape back there, but any enhancement back there would improve it, you know. But I don't think we're talking about, massive areas that have to be redirected. I just don't know if those wells could be, giving yourself a 24-inch deep well to maybe a 36-inch deep well to facilitate putting a different plant variety in there that might be able to give you the vertical. That's the nature of the material.
So there were a few things that were solved by having vines.
Yeah, vines do give you the height.
Yeah, and the flexibility.
Yeah.
We were really concerned about covering the address markers. And when we got down to, measuring how high those would be, and then the light fixtures too, it was limiting us to really, there's a juniper gold cone that gets, just
3 foot
between.
The light fixtures that seem to be adjacent to the garage, and those are probably at a 5-foot height.
Yeah,
roughly.
that's
so
the thing.
You've got up to 5 feet that you go before you encroach on anything. It's a security or a signage type thing. And it would be interesting just to look at a different variety of plant material that might be able to be placed in there. If it needs a little more, well depth to provide it, maybe even a terracing of one small one.
And
There
another.
is. Okay, I
Sorry.
can see from some of the detail that you've got, looks like some of the grasses and things of that nature.
The purple, let's see, we had a juncus in there. It's the elk blue.
Okay. Yeah. But I think there's, just that little bit, just tweak it just a little bit right there in that area in between the buildings. The front seems to be adequate. I would, if possible, get another bush or two in the front and all of that. I wouldn't object to that whatsoever.
What's also
But I see what you've done with parking, and I didn't, from the previous rendering, I didn't like where you had, face-to-face parking. It looked like a parking lot in the middle of an area that you don't want to do. And I have some concerns with regard to parking, but we'll address them in the conditions. I just want to make sure certain things are covered. That would be my suggestion, to have them work with staff to see if we can enhance the plans material that's in between the buildings. You got 26 feet in there, okay, and it's not like it's going to be a thoroughfare that you've got two-way traffic going in. You've got a car going in that's going to require 18 feet to get in. It's the turning radius is what you're given the 24 feet for. So I understand your concern also about additional car trying to squeeze in there. That's going to be a problem anyway. Somebody's going to park in front of their dumb garage door at some point in time.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question of the landscape. Can you tell us what you would do if you had an extra 20 between pavers and the buildings?
It would give us more flexibility, like with, there's a lemon wood. That's a good size plant for there. But then if we had more height, we could have like in the pockets that don't have the address markers, we could even have a Podocarpus macae in there, those taller ones. That would just, if we would need the extra room for those kinds of things. And another,
And I'm sorry in here again, but we Matt's back there scaling and dimensioning things over furiously. And on the plan 3, actually, we do have, because we had the front doors are recessed back for the landing, so we do actually have some planter pockets that are 3 feet deep, so they're not all 18 inches. So there is some.
That's what I saw on the variation.
Yeah, so there is some opportunity to.
And I would maximize those as much as you possibly can to
Yep.
put in something that would be, a little more
Right.
billowy, if you will, to make a greater statement. That would be.
Yeah, and then again, when we were laying out this site plan initially, we're governed by Public Works has their minimum standards, and we have all sorts of things we got to follow. But what we were trying to do was take as much space as possible, put it into this central paseo amenity. So I'm a little hesitant to say any shuffling or moving around of buildings might jeopardize that. What we wanted to do was to achieve additional amenities and open space. We did have to, reconfigure these alleys a little bit, but 3 feet planter pockets, this is typical of a motor court product, 18 inches. You see this very often in these motor court type products. I don't have the dimension on the original Copperleaf, but just looking at it, it's not what we're.
Question. Can you estimate how many square feet of actual plant area is in each one of those paseos?
Thank you. That might have to be calculated. I don't think it's calculated right now.
Yeah, when
There's actually 10 units. How many square feet?
So there's 70 between, well, 5 on each side of the window.
70.
Yes. Yep.
There's also the planting at the very end that you're
Yeah.
seeing as you're coming.
We don't have a problem with that. In the landscaping plans, I thought, and help me out, we had talked about it, and that they didn't at the last of the meeting, they were going to come back with a plan of the vertical landscaping. Going to do. No? Okay.
I think our understanding is that you were looking for the section of what that space looked like, so that's why the drawing was provided. We didn't come away with the understanding. I think what you're trying to say now is that you were probably looking for an elevation of the side of the building there, with inclusive of the landscape.
In one way or another, okay? Now or later, okay? I think we need to see what you're actually proposing. And I think you need to intensify that vertical space, if that's what we're settled upon, is the vertical space. But I think you need to submit drawings to see what that is, because I don't think it meets our finding about landscaping. It's devoid of landscaping, very limited.
So I think we talked a lot about this after that meeting, both internally, and we spoke to Marie and so forth about, would it be a possibility for us to change that? We have 30 feet from garage to garage there, and we were looking to possibly get a variance to squeeze that down and provide a little bit more. That minimum width is required by, is it OCFA or is it the Public Works? So it's Public Works that requires that. So we were looking for a variance so we could create more, but we came to the conclusion that we should probably stick with the guidelines and put the landscape as would be with those restrictions. But
would it be helpful for you to see a more elaborate, enlarged version of what a Woonurf would look like with the kind of landscaping that you're considering, so that it can be developed further? I think one of the things that makes it a little difficult is that these plans, while close to being as exact as possible, it's hard to develop plans to the point of building plan check or landscape plan check, because we're here just for the site development permit, and landscaping is a component of that, but yet it may not necessarily have the specificity that you might want to see, and that we would be looking for, especially if you were to add it as a condition, we could be looking for those things when they submit their final plans through the plan check process and for landscape plan approval. So that's a suggestion I'm putting forth for your consideration. Or they could come back and show us a more elaborate plan.
Prefer for them to come back and actually show us what they propose to do as part of the landscaping plan.
I don't think we need to see any more landscaping plans. And one opinion, and so is Commissioner D'Almeida, I'd like to suggest that if we have any additional speakers, that we talk to them and that we maybe bring it back up here and have our own discussion.
So do we have any additional speakers on this matter? No? Yes, go ahead. One more question.
Okay.
Maybe two more. When I look at the situation with the 5 garage doors all stacked in a row, it looks like the balconies above the garage doors pop out from the building. Is that true? And if they do, how far?
I believe they do. Just with the lever over the garage door?
Yeah, because it looks like they cantilever out over the garage, but by how much?
The balconies? So we have 3 feet and 6 inches.
You've got the garage door, and then you got 3 feet out to the face of the building, and then up above you got your balconies that stick out like 6 inches above that.
Okay, so it's a very, just because, I've seen other developments where they come out farther in order to try and extend the space.
No, we need to keep that clear space up in the alleyway.
So you have to keep that for other reasons, okay. I'm moving, man.
Any other questions? Okay, let's bring it back here and for discussion.
I did have one more question, if you don't mind.
Okay.
You talk about these units being more affordable. How much more affordable than the copper leaf across the street? Being more affordable. How much more affordable?
I don't think we've had prices set at this time, and we're not going to be going to market probably for quite some time still. So the market will kind of dictate that, but they will definitely be on the more of the entry level of the market than they would be, than maybe these townhomes would be kind of like a move up kind of selection based on Orange County.
Because really they look like a little bit more than a fancy apartment building, but anyway, sorry. That's kind of look at all those garages. I mean, that's kind of what it reminds me of. It's very tight. There's not much space there.
Mr. Chairman, if I may add.
Of course, on an entry level, that's
But entry
what
level,
you're looking
that's
for.
what it has to be.
Yeah.
Because it's about as tight as I think you can get it.
If I may. These units, actually, the density permitted is pretty much apartment density. And the good part is that they're units for sale. I like that, okay? We have to recognize that these units are back-to-back, side-to-side. In other words, there's a unit is backed up and side-to-side. So in most cases, there's only one wall of that building that actually has light and ventilation out of that area. So it's not a type of unit that you got a little patio, you can do a little something in there. There's nothing, other than the street, the passageway. So I feel it's very important for the people who are living there that we enrich that passageway. There's no other area.
Any more questions? Let's bring it up here for discussion then.
Thank you.
And I do notice there that there are a lot of common areas where there's parks and kind of areas for play and all that kind of stuff, so that's good. And I do believe, though, with an entry level, that's just something you get into, and that's what you do, and then at some point then, as life goes on, then you can move into something that's bigger and whatnot. So I'm pretty happy with this design. I like it better than the other one as far as the parking and dispersing it, and I'm pretty happy with the way it is, so that's just my opinion.
Make a motion that we close the public hearing and bring it for discussion amongst ourselves.
I just did that.
The public hearing isn't closed, but it's up here at the dais for discussion. We don't close the public hearing until we're ready to make a motion to go forward on the project.
Clarification, please.
Absolutely, Chair and Commissioners. Typically, this body has been, the public hearing encompasses the discussion as well. So typically, this body closes a public hearing, makes a motion, seconds and votes. So that happens as part of the motion at the end. But at this point, it is there for discussion.
What I'm proposing is that we close the public hearing, and then we discuss among ourselves what the options are of what we can do.
That's not what we do.
When we discuss, it has to be a public hearing.
Yes,
We close the public hearing when we're ready to vote.
correct.
And that's what our attorney just told us.
All right?
Okay. We're not ready to make a motion as yet. Okay, so the public hearing should remain open until such time as we're willing or somebody wants to make a motion. If you wish to make a motion to close the public hearing and make a recommendation, that becomes part of that motion. If that motion does not carry, the public comment period is still open, and we're up for further discussion. Right now, we're just...
My understanding is we were discussing...
I'm just trying to clarify so that we all have that same understanding. But I think we're still in discussion phase at this point in time, because I don't believe that was phased as a motion. Was it? No, it wasn't. Okay. So why don't we go ahead. I really think, looking at the L1 rendering that was there, that there's more than adequate landscape in the deal in the frontage. Okay, it's the only concern, and I think if we can address those wells, that enhances those. That seems to be the point of discussion. I wanted to add one other thing as part of the conversation. As we were going through and for the recommendation for establishment of the CC&Rs, I saw there was a section in there that the CC&Rs with regard to parking. Okay, and one thing I want to ensure that when we go to this, that part of that discussion with the CC&Rs is that there's no opportunity for, I want to make sure the board of the CC&R or the association board is not able to modify those parking mandates to where we have an existing situation where a condominium complex, as part of their association dues, are charging for the spaces, okay, which is forcing people out onto the street. I want to make sure that, since this is a parking mandate that we have for this deal, for adequate parking, that within the CC&Rs, and it has to be, I don't know how we address it, to ensure that the parking standards as we have placed on this particular project is not something that they can, modify and charge for or whatever. I don't know if we have the capability of doing it.
Commissioner Carter? The conditions of approval of the original track map 15353 does require a parking management plan associated with the CC&Rs pertaining to the multifamily site. The Copperleaf project included a parking management plan that was very site-specific.
Okay.
And so, if you would like, we could entertain adding this provision that you've just stated and ensuring that the parking management plan that has to be revised should this site plan include provision.
This does not put any burden on you guys. This is just something to ensure that we don't encounter something down the road. It's reminiscent of where we used to have to worry about water runoff. Now it's all got to be maintained on. Since we are going to express conditions to ensure there's adequate parking, I don't want anything to come in undercut that, which forces these folks out onto the street.
Commissioner Carter, Chair and Commissioners, there is a provision in the Lake Forest Municipal Code that prohibits the lease or sale of code-required spaces. We can, our office can work with Ms. Luna and implement that into the CC&R. This explicitly referenced.
Yeah, I would like to have that specifically referenced in the CC&R if at all possible. Okay, and it's just one of those things we've got to take progressive steps to ensure that as we're mandating parking, nothing should happen within the association that would force those folks out onto the street because they don't want to pay for the parking.
So my question would be regarding that. If there's a city ordinance preventing that, why would we need to include that? Because it would be like double. What would be the point of adding something like that?
That's a good question, Chair Armando. It's not unusual for the city to, restate.
It's not unusual, did you say?
Yes, it's not unusual. So it does occur, and the CC&Rs are given to all the homeowners, so they'd be on notice. Sometimes, homeowners or property owners aren't on notice necessarily of all the city codes unless they go to the municipal code. But this would be given to them, and they'd have, their CC&Rs, and so it would be there in the documents for them to see if they cared to look.
And the only reason I'm suggesting that is I do know we have one development within the community that has, somehow there was a loophole that got missed at the county or what, and that is is exactly what's taking place, and that's why we've got spillage. And we have not had an opportunity as a commission to look at this type of development before, and I think we need to take progressive steps to ensure that we try to keep the parking within the confines of each of those developments. And I think these would be private streets, but even that falls within our purview.
Anything else?
I think, that if staff is working with the applicant with regard to the wood-offs and, trying to, did I pronounce this time? Okay. To ensure that, that we've got adequate plant material there. I think the plant material in the front of the buildings could be enhanced just slightly, possibly, if you can. But I think overall the project is landscaped adequately, more than adequately. And I do really like the idea that they've redesigned those parking areas. I wasn't here for the discussion on the first go-around, but this is a far better product than that was.
I got something. So with respect to Commissioner D'Almeida's idea of taking away a couple of buildings, which I don't really have a lot of respect for that, but because you are the developer, it is your land. But adding landscaping on those alleyways, as I'm going to call them, because you came up with a very nice fancy word for an alleyway. Alleyways don't have landscaping, and these are definitely alleyways. But what I like what you've done with your alleyways is you've named them fancy, and you put some landscaping, and you're concerned about the street signs, the numbers. You're concerned about the lighting, the safety issue. But as a mom, I see kids playing there, and if you were to build out by reducing a building and build them out by however many feet you want to. Now you've got landscaping, but then you still have to have the driveway, so then you really basically have landscaping, driveway, and you don't have the play area. And I think that's what a winner is designed for, is that you have this play area, and you don't have to worry when my boys play basketball in my driveway, and I cannot keep my roses because of those boys. So we just battle about that, but it's more important that they play basketball. And so that's what I see here is I see a community getting together and maybe even, putting out a barbecue in the winter, and maybe even just a bucket and putting some wood in there and making a bonfire and roasting marshmallows. And so, yeah, would it be nice to look out and see some beautiful landscaping that maybe my neighbor's keeping theirs up, maybe they're not. But I don't envision that. I'm not an architect, but I like what this architect did. I like what the landscape architects are doing, and I believe they're going to enhance. I think it's just it's beautiful the way you presented it. Thank you.
You just raised an interesting deal. I looked at the rendering. Where is the entry to the unit off of the wood roof? Is it on the wood roof itself, or because I fail to see, if I'm looking at the appropriate one, to see where there's any doors.
Oh, yeah, we forgot that. No, I'm just kidding.
Doors?
There's some articulation on the front sides of the buildings, but the two plans at the end take access off the ends. Their front doors are at the ends of the building, at the back end and the front end.
Right.
And then the three in the center take it right from the center there on, and there's that articulation back and forth that creates like a front porch interaction there.
Okay.
Did you get to
so
see
the
that?
address is going to be on the wood roof?
Yes, the majority.
So that
Are they lit or not?
I think the buildings are actually lit, right? Yeah,
The
building
addresses?
The addresses are lit as well. Do we?
Or do we know?
I think it's. I don't think we've. Have we? I think we can make that happen.
Well, I just...
Yeah. I don't know that we're at that level.
Okay.
We can make that happen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, while we're just, may I? Thank you. While we're discussing it, there's a sheet here, right up in here towards the back. It's called A71, and where it shows the elevations of, that you would see in the, I'm going to call it paseo, because I can't pronounce the other word. And if you look at, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 garages, you know, that's 16 times 5, whatever. But you notice the little tiny little spot there of landscaping, if you look at that sheet, A71. I think we're doing a disservice to the people who are going to live there, that there isn't some other green. And if you look at the project, and if you look at High Meadow as a dividing line between two different projects, you see the landscaping and distribution of parking for that portion of the project. Then you look on the upper side of High Meadow, there is nothing. I mean, virtually no parking. If somebody's going to have a party, it's very difficult. Okay? And I'm willing to overlook that. But the idea of just introducing some plant material there and to make it happen and to convince us that they can do a good job, I think is...
Commissioner, in the form of a condition that I'd like to provide you with. I've indicated vertical landscaping shall be provided throughout the wooners and shall include trellis structures with a cable system over the garage. In addition, to facilitate different plant materials, wells shall be enlarged from 24 inches to 30 possible.
Would that be something that would be agreeable to you? I mean, is that... Put that...
Maybe Maria wants to read it again.
This is...
And David, you could pay attention. That would be a good...
May you can also add that if you look at the elevation, there's balconies, and you know, if you go to Madrid or you go to Barcelona, whatever, there. No, why are you shaking your head?
This is the condition that I've written for the Commission's consideration. Vertical landscaping shall be provided throughout the wooners and shall include trellis structures with a cable system over the garage. In addition, to facilitate different plant materials, wells shall be enlarged from 24 inches to 36 inches wherever possible. Trellises or cable? Sure. Okay. Trellis structures.
Would go smoothly and not have to change much. That would work good. Okay.
Marie, if you could add
Probably prior to issuance of building permit.
An approval body.
Subject to review and approval by you, the Development Services Director.
Question. Taking those paseos again. We need to have lighting is provided in the evening. Basically, there's no lighting other than 1, 2, 3, 4 fixtures. They're usually wall-mounted, small wattage, and so there has to be some consideration of what type of fixtures put in there that provides additional light in this area.
Doesn't the city require a certain amount of street lights on the streets? Is that...
There's a condition of approval. It is 16B that says the site lights is a condition that was placed by Public Works Engineering, and that's prior to the issuance of building permits. And the fact that we have the ENG in parentheses, it means that they will need to sign off on that. Because yes, they will need to look at the distances between the street lights. And I believe it's generally 30 feet on a street. Perhaps you can help me with that. Is that something you recall? That's what I recall anyway from working with the engineers. But that is something that will be sorted out prior to issuance of building permit, and that we're adding it at condition of approval.
Somewhere 125 feet.
I would imagine that they will be providing lighting along.
The code does require lighting. I believe it's a half-a-foot candle. I don't have that exact number, but it is governed by the building code, so there will be a photometric plan prepared that analyzes very specifically for every lighting is provided.
And that's covered.
It's covered by the Uniform Building Code, California Building Code. So we generally don't repeat all of the requirements from the building.
Okay. I'm going to suggest to you that what's shown right now, those, what I'm assuming are just the regular type of little fixture you have at an entry door, are not adequate. And it doesn't appear to be in the site plan any other area for putting lighting or provisions for that lighting.
Did you just say that it's a condition of approval that they come up with a plan?
It's a condition of the Uniform Building Code. So when our chief building inspector and our plan check, they can't issue it without having received a.
So we wouldn't expect to see it here on, in our, but we would expect that.
The building plans, the construction plans would include.
Thank you.
Now, just with my thoughts too with the landscaping, we're talking about the front, and all that kind of stuff. I think it looks fine, but again, these units are for sale, and if somebody goes in there and it's something that they don't like, then they won't buy. Somebody else conceivably will. So I think all in all, it looks pretty well. And if they look and say, "Gosh, I wish there was more landscaping," I guess I'll go somewhere else. I mean, that's what it gets down to. So again, that's why I think it's fine the way it is. And if people don't like it, then they'll go somewhere else, I suppose. So, Tom, do you have something?
Yeah. Well, I think because that section is affordable housing, I mean, there's certain things that you just cannot do, and I suspect that probably part of your determination for the number of buildings has got to do with making the project financially viable. I see you nodding your head about that. Yeah, it's tight, and there's not a whole lot of landscaping there. The lighting I'm not worried about because the building code will take care of that. But I think all in all, the project's okay. I'm glad to see the tendency towards the affordable housing. We just don't have much of that. And I would like to see more, entry-level property here that people can buy and sell with. It's, everything is a compromise, and I think, this is probably one of the highest concentration, things that we've looked at. But on the other hand, I think in terms of what you're trying to accomplish, it's probably been done as well as could be expected. So I think that, I don't have any problem improving it. If any improvements you can make to the landscape as you go on, I think, I would agree with Marie's, condition. I think that the project's probably is what it needs to be.
Okay. I just like to comment. The renderings that I saw, I think, are fabulous. I've seen quite a few in my tenure, and I'm very pleased with the product that you seem to be putting out there. I think with some little tweaks there on those, you're going to say it again, the woodruff or whatever it is. So I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to close the public hearing and to include Maria's condition of approval, taking into consideration the changes that were made to notation of the red line changes and the request I had made with regard to the CCNRs and parking, that we approve the site is permitted.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to like to suggest a substitute motion,
Okay.
and that we ask the developer to come back and show us how those the sales are refined before we approve the project.
So can we vote on that separately? Because,
He doesn't have a second yet.
okay. I don't hear a second.
Yeah, so you can move on.
There is a motion on the floor.
Okay.
Any discussion?
Is there any further discussion that's necessary?
I'd like for the vote on the first motion.
Yes.
I'm sorry, we need a second on the first motion.
There was a second.
I seconded the first motion, and there wasn't a second on the substitute motion, so I'm calling it back to the first motion for a vote.
Correct. So let's vote on the first motion. Or recommendation.
Commissioner
This is
Fuentes?
killing me.
Hello?
Try again?
Not working.
It's like when you're trying to cross, you press the button a million times, maybe it'll go better.
Is it on? Okay. Do it the old-fashioned
You already
way.
pushed your,
7 times. 7.
Just do a roll call vote.
Let's do a roll call vote.
Aye.
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 motion passes 4-1.
Congratulations and welcome. So to the point now, the city attorney comments,
No comment, thank you.
director comments,
I have no comments this evening.
and commission comments.
As you all know, I'm doing stuff with the Boys and Girls Club, and a couple of you have asked when we're going to do our Night Under the Stars. We have established a date for that. Hopefully it's firm at this point in time. So Friday, August 24th, and it's going to be at the Sun and Sail Club this time, so we don't have to go outside of the city.
That would make
It's
sense.
time to bring it into the city, because that's where it's going to be.
Great.
What was the date again?
Pardon?
What date's again?
August 24th, Friday.
No comment.
And no comment from me.
No comment.
I'd like to discuss with staff. I know we're confined with the development agreement in which a number of units were discussed there. And I just want to point out there's several ways, and we hopefully in the future we can consider this of determining what density is. You have dwelling units per acre, you have floor area ratio. In the project we just approved, it's almost 1. That means that there's 1 square foot of building area for 1 square foot of site, okay? And that's equal to the commercial densities that we have. The third is impervious cover, and fourth is persons per acre. And I'd like for you to consider that when you're evaluating these projects. And I want to suggest, it's my own sole opinion, is we've just gone to the end of the limits of how dense we can make these projects. I mean, you've got, I don't know how many buildings there are in their structures, and they're all 3 stories. And, you know, one portion on High Meadow is has open space and distribution of parking. The other does not, and we should try not to do that. And those are my thoughts.
Okay, so I'm going to adjourn this meeting to the next regularly scheduled meeting, which was May 24th, but that's been canceled, so the next meeting will be adjourned to June 14th.